Today I speak to you about looking at the world through old eyes. Our first reading is an example of the Old Testament, with views of a very old time. So close off all of your electronics, turn off your fans and air conditioning, move out of your homes and into tents. No more cars, and definitely no more stupid SUVs. Your camel or donkey are right where they're supposed to be. Maybe, if you are or know who you are related to someone, you'll even have a horse. In the 18th century BC, females don't go stupid over horses. Now that you're in the right place, physically and mentally, this is where Abraham is. This is where 1/3 of the known population have been enslaved, more than their number, to work in the fields, home, to raise children, etc. It is not the slavery of 1820 United States Alabama, but far worse times. Abram was 1800 before Christ, with the Egyptians purportedly having enslaved and murdered the Jews to force them to build the pyramids. We now know this was not true, but Jews were the slaves of Egypt through approximately the 20th through the 17th centuries before Christ. So view this with 18th century before Christ eyes and mind, not with a mind sharpened or slackened by technology. These readings occurred 10 years after the readings of last week, after God promised Abraham a mighty race of warriors, as many descendants as pieces of dust, and nothing yet had come of Sarah. Many biblical stories make her age to be 15 years younger than Abraham. But no fool is going to be told trying to impregnate any 68-year-old woman, whose courses would have stopped at that time, 35 to 40 years earlier. Women would have started their childbearing years at the age of 12, and would have gone through at most age 30. Even men aren't thick enough to think that a woman at 40 in those years, when they were dying, would be giving birth. She was likely in her late 20s to early 30s, which was old for that time. To live to 50 was very old. And she was approaching her end of years. Thus, the pressure to perform was greater. There were only so many ovum left to work with. But it was commonplace and a custom of that time, but highly unusual and slightly seedy for us to think of, whereby the wife finds and brings into the marriage bed a concubine that would fulfill the childbearing duties, not the child-rearing, the childbearing duties, but nothing else sexually. This custom of an infertile wife providing her husband with a concubine to produce children is widely attested to in ancient Near Eastern law, and has been found in old Assyrian marriage contracts, which state that the wife must provide her husband with a concubine if she does not bear children within 2 years. For remember, marriage is a business contract, not a thing of love. She must produce or be put aside. And once put aside, she will become nothing but a servant, working for her keep. But the fact Abraham forcibly impregnating a slave to get his son, no girl child would have been accepted. He would have been staying on that slave until the boy was dropped. and the boy received of the slave was Ishmael, also known as Ibrahim in Muslim text. He was born with future burdens and already had a prophecy about him from before his birth. Quote, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. In opposition to all his kin shall he encamp. Ishmael, Ibrahim, is an ancestor to Muhammad, and he will build a portion of the Kaaba with a prophet in his own right, while establishing the 12 tribes of Ishmaelites within Israel. We will learn more, and I will write more on Ishmael and his, quote, weenie sneaky brother Isaac, Ishmael's view, not mine, and talk about the very brutal initial period of marking those that participate in the covenant between God and Abraham. Men, of course, think about what they had to do. Keep your minds in the 18th century before Christ, so to remove your 21st century values, ideals, and condemnations. You can't view the events of 38 centuries ago through the prism of our values and our eyes. They are not of the same world. And please note, the same is true for all events of 100 and 200 years ago. A slave owner in 18th century Adonai, after Christ, was merely living. It is no commentary on their treatment of the slaves, nor any note on their ethical or morality if they owned a slave.